Northwest Iran, March 14, 2026. -11°C. The kind of cold that makes your teeth ache just breathing it in. A man in a shredded flight suit, left leg broken at the fibula, pressed into a frozen creek bed, listening to something that should have made him feel better, but didn't. Two Iranian AH-1J Cobras were sweeping a ridgeline 300 meters above him, searchlights cutting arcs through the snowfall. On his survival radio, Iranian state television was broadcasting in English, live, an anchor holding up a photograph and reading a statement from the Revolutionary Guard. An American F-15 pilot had been captured, in custody, proof that the Islamic Republic's air defenses had drawn blood. The man in the frozen creek heard every word. The Iranians didn't have him, they just didn't know it yet. This is the story of Major Jason Morrow. 6 hours earlier, Morrow had launched from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar as part of a 4-ship strike package, call signs Banshees 11 through 14, targeting an Iranian ballistic missile production facility outside Tabriz. The facility had been operational for 11 months, 3 formal warnings, 2 rounds of sanctions, 1 final diplomatic deadline, delivered by the Secretary of State in Geneva. The deadline came and went. The package launched. All 4 aircraft hit their targets on schedule and egressed clean. Then Banshee 12 took a late hit from a Bavar 373 surface-to-air missile on the way out. Low probability shot, wrong geometry, wrong moment, wrong piece of sky. Morrow flew the jet 40 more miles on 1 engine before the hydraulics failed completely. He ejected at 28,000 feet over the Alborz range at 22:17 local. His WSO, Captain Elena Reyes, ejected 2 seconds behind him on a different vector. Reyes came down 8 kilometers east in Azerbaijan. Turkish SOF recovered her within the hour. Morrow came down in Iran. CSAR assets from the 20th Special Operations Squadron were already spinning up at a classified FOB in northern Iraq before his parachute finished opening. The window was 4 hours. After that, Iranian quick reaction forces would have every ridgeline in that grid square locked down.
But before the rescue package launched, there was one critical problem. Morrow's ejection coordinates were approximate. Radar track, last known position, dead reckoning. Not good enough. Not for a blacked-out, low-level run into the Alborz in a snowstorm. At 2:30:04, a CIA officer at the FOB, name still classified, listed in no official record, made a single satellite phone call to a contact inside Azerbaijan. That contact had a second contact, someone with eyes and ears inside the IRGC's Northwestern Air Defense Network. Within 9 minutes, a confirmed grid came back. Not approximate, exact. Nobody announced it. Nobody celebrated it. A slip of paper changed hands in a room with no windows and no cameras. That grid is the reason Pale Horse 1 found Morrow in 41 seconds on the ground, instead of 9 minutes. 9 minutes. And this story ends differently. The CIA officer filed nothing, made no record, went back to his coffee. That was the whole job. The rescue package launched at 23:14. 2 MH-60M Blackhawks from the 160th SOAR, call signs Pale Horse 1 and Pale Horse 2. 4 pararescuers from the 38th Rescue Squadron. 2 Air Force combat controllers. 1 MC-130J Commando 2 overhead at 22,000 feet, running command and control. Call sign King 7. Estimated flight time to the survivor, 69 minutes at low level. Into Iran. No lights. 40 feet off the terrain on NODs. The Alborz don't forgive navigational error. 15,000-foot ridgelines, narrow frozen valleys, 0 margin. The 160th trains for this. They don't talk about it. They just go. Pale Horse 1 crossed feet dry over the Iranian border at 23:47. The crew went silent. Only the rotors. At 00:22, Morrow's ANPRC 149 survival radio crackled. King 7, high overhead. Banshee 1-2, authenticate. He gave the code. A pause that lasted maybe 3 seconds but felt much longer. Then, we have you. Don't move. He didn't. At 00:31, Pale Horse 1 picked up his ANPLB 112 beacon at 4.3 kilometers out. The PJ in the left door, Tech Sergeant Marcus Webb, tapped the pilot on the shoulder and held up 4 fingers. 4 kilometers. The pilot nodded. Nobody spoke. That was enough. At 00:33, Pale Horse 2 called it out. Iranian light infantry, 2 BTR-type vehicles moving north up the valley road from the direction of Nir. Range, 6 kilometers. Closing. Mission Commander Major Hollister had approximately 4 minutes to make a decision. He made it in 4 seconds. Push the timeline. We're going hot. Pale Horse 1 broke left, dropped into a frozen riverbed, and ran the last 2 miles at 60 knots, 20 feet above the ice. No margin. Nothing held back. At a command post outside Nir, Colonel Tariq Sadeghi of the IRGC Aerospace Force had held a briefing at 23:30, before the rescue package even crossed the border. He stood before his officers like a man already composing his acceptance speech. He told them the American would be in a detention facility by 0300. He told them this would be their defining moment. Their pueblo. And then he said, with the absolute certainty of a man who had never been wrong inside his own mountains, "They will not dare come for him, not here, not inside our country." He was already writing the statement he planned to read on state television by sunrise. What Sadeghi didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that the grid he was searching, the valley his BTRs were closing on, had already been handed to the Americans 46 minutes ago by someone he trusted. At 0038, Pale Horse 1 flared into a clearing 40 meters wide. Snow exploded in all directions. The crew chief, Sergeant First Class Danny Ruiz, had rigged a fast rope without being asked. Quiet insurance in case the terrain didn't allow a clean touchdown. Nobody told him to. He just knew what the mission needed, and he did it before anyone said a word. Webb was out the door before the skids touched. He hit the ground at a dead run. Morrow was already crawling toward the light, dragging his broken leg through frozen ground. Webb reached him, grabbed the drag handle on his survival vest, pulled. Together, 15 meters across ice and rock, the rotors never stopped turning at full RPM. Ruiz held the door open with both hands. Morrow came through it. Webb came through it. Ruiz pulled the door. Go. The crew chief would describe it later in a classified debrief he was ordered never to repeat. The smell that hit him when Morrow came through that door. JP-8 jet fuel, blood, and frozen earth all at once. The smell of a man who had been inside a burning aircraft, fallen out of the sky, and survived 91 minutes in a frozen creek bed at -11. Ruiz said it was the smell of the whole mission. Said he'd never forget it. He never has. Pale Horse 1 was on the ground for 41 seconds, then climbing out of the valley north, back into the dark. 4 minutes and 17 seconds after liftoff, the Iranian BTRs reached that clearing. 4 minutes. If that CIA grid had never come through, if the rescue package had flown in on approximate coordinates and had to sweep the valley, the Iranians reached that clearing first. Morrow doesn't come home. Webb doesn't come home. Not the crew, not any of them. 40 minutes after liftoff, somewhere over the Iran-Iraq border at altitude, Webb finished stabilizing Morrow's leg. He pressed a field dressing across the laceration above the knee and held it without speaking. Morrow stared at the ceiling of the helicopter. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from the cold, from 91 minutes in freezing water, from wet gear at altitude. His gloves were gone. He didn't know when he'd lost them. He looked at his hands. They didn't look like his hands. The Air Force has a formal name for what just happened to him. Isolated personnel recovery. A doctrine, a curriculum, a block on a training schedule at Nellis. He was looking at his bare hands in the dark of a blacked-out helicopter still inside Iranian airspace, and he had a different word for it. He never said it out loud. He didn't need to. Webb looked at him once, and then looked away. Pale Horse 1 crossed back into Iraqi airspace at 0049. Morrow was transferred to a trauma team at the FOB at 0127. Fibula fractured in 2 places. Core temp 34.2 Celsius, the edge of clinical hypothermia. He was medevaced to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany within 6 hours. Captain Reyes was already there. She handed him a coffee when he walked in. He drank it. That was the reunion. Neither of them said anything about what had happened. They didn't need to. The United States government did not confirm the rescue for 72 hours. The official statement was 4 sentences long and immediately classified. Iran's state television continued running its capture story for 11 days before quietly removing the segment. No correction, no explanation. Colonel Sadeghi was transferred to a logistics command in Awaz 3 weeks later.
The men of Pale Horse 1 and Pale Horse 2 received no public recognition. That is standard for the Night Stalkers. A handshake in a room that doesn't officially exist. Tech Sergeant Webb received a decoration that won't be made public until this operation is declassified. The CIA officer who made that satellite call at 23:04 submitted no after-action report, no cable to Langley, no entry in any system that oversight committees would ever review. One call, one grid, one pilot home. He considered that a clean night's work. The thing no one mentions in the official record, the ANPRC-149 survival radio that kept Morrow alive for those 91 minutes, it had a cracked housing from the ejection. By every technical specification, it should not have transmitted. It transmitted anyway. He survived the ejection, he survived the mountains, he survived the cold. And then, men he'd never met flew into Iran in the dark with no one watching, and they brought him home. That's the job. If this story hit different, if you felt what was at stake, hit that like button, subscribe,